Thank you. And it's been really funny. Like over the past 3 weeks, probably, I've had, I think, three of my very long-term, 20-year long friends say to me, just Matt, like, you're so much different now. You're so much calmer than you used to be. And that really makes me stop in my tracks and just really think about like this journey. And yeah, I mean, so you want to hear my story a bit? Is that okay to share?
Yeah, that'll be fine. That'd be great. I think a lot of people might be inspired by it. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So, yeah, long story, kind of on the more abbreviated side. I had a traumatic childhood. I grew up in, a stressful home, a chaotic home. It was very difficult to admit this because I did grow up in a house with love and a family that tried their best, but it didn't mean there wasn't chaos and there wasn't a lot of trauma that happened to me.
Let me invite you to sit back, drop your jaw, tongue, and shoulders. Take a deep breath, and if you wish, close your eyes for a moment. In a few seconds, you just jumped from head to heart, opening up to receive even more value and fulfillment out of your business and life. And today's episode. I'm your host, Nico van der Venne, confidant to successful CEOs, founders, and entrepreneurs striving to achieve everlasting fulfillment. Welcome to the Everlasting Podcast with our next guest, Matt Gerlach. Matt is more than just an entrepreneur and author. He is a conqueror of challenges and a beacon of personal transformation, with an unwavering belief in the inherent wisdom within each of us. He guides his clients to unearth their inner strength and conquer the barriers blocking their path to success. Matt scaled his consulting business to generate an impressive $1 million in annual revenue, and he works one on one with men who grapple with self doubt, illuminating the truth that there is nothing inherently flawed within them, and empowers them to embrace their true selves, enabling them to pursue their passion and aspirations with confidence and purpose. Hello, Matt. That is a beautiful introduction of who you are. We've had the conversation before, and it is 100% who you are. It's amazing. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. And thanks for the nice words.
It has to be said. So you've got a very amazing future. You're successful. You're clearly very successful, but that success has not come overnight and not without its challenges. So what are you prepared to share with us today on these stories?
I think that things are always changing. And I think that growth prepares us for change, personal growth, the desire to continue to improve and grow allows us to change with the world and the economy and everything that goes along with it. And, I, as a business professional, I am navigating through a lot of changes right now. And I have to tell you that by learning to trust myself, learning to heal from childhood trauma, learning to grow, to constantly be learning and growing. I feel more prepared than ever, and I want to help your listeners understand that we can get to this place of being resilient and able to make an abundant lives for ourselves.
Yeah, indeed. It's true. And sometimes we don't even see the possibilities anymore when we're totally ingrained in our business, trying to survive. And, where is that next customer going to come from? How are we going to find them? But it all starts from who we are, the inside of us that is the drive of making a success of that business. And it's not basically about success, it's more or less the fulfillment of success. Because I just today in my car, I was listening to the many podcasts that I listen to. I always drive like an hour in the morning and an hour in the evening, and especially this evening I was enjoying traffic jam collectively with other people. So I had all the time to listen, and it was specifically about Olympic medalists. There's apparently a documentary on this, on the Olympic medalists, gold medalists, of the past, and how many of these people have actually ended their lives right, a couple of months or years after they've achieved that one medal they've worked for like 15 to 20 years. And then the big question is, why do these people do that? It's usually because they don't have that fulfillment at the point where they're getting the gold medal. It's like a 2 minute rush, or even sometimes it's a 2 minutes, finally I got it, and that's it. And I think I understand what you're trying to bring into the world is also a way of finding that more deeper purpose and deeper fulfillment before reaching that endpoint. Is that a good estimation of what you want to reach?
Absolutely. I mean, I'm a big fan of, like, when you were saying this, I couldn't help but think about stoicism. I'm a big fan
Mm.
of stoicism. And, um, you know, it's kind of funny. I read The Daily Stoic by Ryan Holiday. I've read it
Oh
every
yeah.
single day for probably the past 6 years. And I've started saying this week, like this year. I think that really sunk in and it really changed me. And it's about finding fulfillment in our lives. It's not about this destination that we're trying to get to. And me right now, I'm in a change right now. I'm writing a book. I am building a brand around the healing that I've done, helping other men do this. And it hit me the other day that I was like, what is this? Like, what is the goal here? You want to have this essay published in the New York Times. And I really was able to to slow down for a second, back
Mhm.
up a little bit and realize how much I'm enjoying the process of this.
Oh,
And
that's great news.
it
Yeah.
is true that we need to put food on our table. And,
Mhm.
I mean, that is important. Obviously, I'm in a privileged place that I have income coming from another area where I'm able to pursue my creative abilities right now. But I
Mhm.
think that it's all about finding joy in our lives and building a life that we find joyful. And I've started thinking about this a lot lately. I think we're taught gratitude, and I have a gratitude practice. In the morning, I say what I'm grateful for. In the evening, I say what I'm grateful for. It
Mhm.
absolutely works. But to be
Yeah.
gracious and to desire more, it's not mutually exclusive. You can want both.
Mhm.
And I think that so many of us are always chasing that destination and waiting for that Olympic medal. But then when we get there, there's nothing left. I mean, there's nothing left to go after. And it very truly, it is hard. I mean, once you've achieved that level of greatness, if you're
Mhm.
looking to go further, it's not necessarily possible. Your body has limitations. But
Indeed.
I think it's all about internal and us finding internal peace, internal happiness, and internal fulfillment. So I'm very, very, very committed to changing from that destination focused life to enjoying my life today. And I'll tell you, I'm in a lot of peace.
Mm. Well, I'd love to talk to you about as well about your past, because Ben Albert, shout out against Ben Albert, he connected us again, and I have so many people coming into the podcast thanks to Ben, but it's amazing. But I wanted to talk to you because you explained a lot about your past in Ben's podcast, and I found it so inspirational where you came from as being such a stressful person, always searching for that success, and finding ways to support your family and all of those, and your life of course, but everything that's around that, and how you broke through, actually coming to a point where you're starting to, now what you're saying, enjoying what you're doing instead of being stress. We call it a stress rabbit in
Yeah.
in in our country. So maybe that's something that might be relatable, but I am just amazed by the track that you've walked these past years.
Thank you. And it's been really funny. Like over the past 3 weeks, probably I've had, I think, three of my very long-term, 20-year long friends say to me, just Matt, like, you're so much different now. You're so much calmer than you used to be. And that really makes me stop in my tracks and just really think about this journey. And yeah, I mean, so you want to hear my story a bit? Is that okay to share?
Yeah, yeah, that'd be fine. That'd be great. I think a lot of people might be inspired by it. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So, yeah, long story, kind of on the more abbreviated side. I had a traumatic childhood. I grew up in, a stressful home, a chaotic home. It was very difficult to admit this because I did grow up in a house with love and a family that tried their best. but it didn't mean there wasn't chaos and there wasn't a lot of trauma that happened to me. And at school, I went about 4 years with not a single friend. And I had so much shame about it that I hid it from everybody. I didn't want anyone to know quite frankly, what a loser I was. And I never healed from this. And when I got to college and even in high school, I made friends. I made a lot of friends actually. And I just like became the life of the party. I drank a lot. I was just running from my problems. And
Mhm.
well, I guess I wouldn't say necessarily running from my problems, but running from my past.
Mhm.
And this lasted for about 10 years. I was successful. I had jobs that I didn't come from a very wealthy family, and I didn't really know like what high what high achievers are supposed to be earning. So I was
Yeah.
working very hard. I thought if I needed to make more money, I just needed to put in more time. And
Mhm.
I moved to New York. In New York, I life is expensive there, and
Mhm.
I did learn. When I moved there, I thought that like rich business people made $100,000, and rich doctors and lawyers made $200,000. And boy, was I mistaken. So that's really where things changed for me. I landed working for a couple of entrepreneurial companies where they, really rewarded for high performing people. And I started to make some good money. And I started a business of my own. So I have this consulting business that I started about 8 years ago, helping
Mhm.
baby product brands grow. I manage sales and marketing and revenue generation for them. And once I started this business, I started crumbling. Honestly, I never had really learned to set boundaries. I never had really
Mhm.
learned to listen to my needs, and I was just saying yes. I wanted more money coming in. Clients were saying, I need you to do this, or like, and I just couldn't say no, and it actually wound me
Mhm.
up in the hospital. The stress was so bad. The
Yeah.
doctors kept me overnight, thinking I was having a heart attack, and I wasn't. I mean, it was just anxiety. I mean, I shouldn't say
Yeah.
just anxiety, but I was discharged. I started seeing my doctors to see what was going on, started having panic attacks, and eventually it led me to a neurologist who said, Matt, I've seen this a million times. You're suffering from anxiety. It's just plain old anxiety, and you need to, face what's going on. So I started yoga teacher training. I started reading a lot. I started learning, and of course, therapy and going to the regular doctors, and learned that underneath this all was childhood trauma that I just, my needs were always excessive for my family, and I was punished for my needs, and I'm gay, and just kind of always thought that I was less than.
Mhm.
And once I healed, man, I mean, everything changed for me. I,
Yeah.
I, I learned to advocate for myself. I said no to my clients in terms of what I would do, what I wouldn't. I was able to negotiate a fair compensation for for the value I brought to their business. And I've made millions of dollars over these past few years doing this and changing their lives and changing mine in the process. And, I will tell you, like on the other side of of this healing, there is just so much freedom, and you start to
Mhm.
learn that you can trust yourself. And I think that's the biggest thing, that when we are suffering from trauma, we don't trust ourselves, and we're in this
Mhm.
place of being overly grateful for mediocrity. We
Yeah.
start thinking like, oh well, I'm working 60 hours a week for less than living wages, like it could be worse. It always could be worse. And
Mhm.
but man, I mean, I'll tell you, like from all the work that I've done, like I see it in myself. I don't have anxiety anymore. I should be careful to say it like that. I don't feel anxious. I do believe that life will probably throw some curveballs my way, and I'll need to, um, and I'll have some, I think we all will. But yeah, I mean, I'm nothing the way I used to be at all. I used to be scared, driven by scarcity, and just afraid of my own shadow. And now, not much rocks me.
That's, it's for me, it's an amazing story. It must be inspiring for other people who are listening right now, because there's a lot of us who, I can relate for parts of your story. High school. I think it was lower school, not high school. The school that is that middle school in the U.S.
Middle
where
school.
from 6 years old to 12.
Yeah.
Um, I think in my third year, after the first semester, they said, "Oh well, he's not, he's not catching up with the rest of the class. Let's put him back in that second year." And I carried that for a whole long time of my life. And getting into that other year, those kids were laughing with me because I was probably a degenerate or whatever. They were thinking like that. So I was made fun of for a couple of years, and then I actually moved from school. Um, Driving a bus like 30 to 40 minutes away from my village, which was astounding because I had never left my village, and I don't live in a completely isolated area, but at the time. But it was a big step. It was I went to a big school. They had all categories of schools there, where in a village they just had the middle school. And all these things, you carry these things for so long. And then at some point in high school, for instance, there was the moment where you have to choose which direction you want to go in. And a lot of people were saying, "Oh, you're not a big student, so take something easy, learn yourself a very good, what do you call it, artisanal thing, where electricity. Yes, that's a good idea. Learn electricity." So I went into that direction, and there were teachers who actually wanted to motivate me to go more in the sciences, but I was like, no, no, I'm too dumb for that. No, no, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing it. So I actually finished high school, never went to university or anything like that, and started working right away. And it took me about 20 years to actually realize that I have an innate natural talent to be a leader, because all the people gravitated around me, even if I didn't have the title. I was directing stuff and doing project management without even knowing it. And it's just so funny that it takes so long. You have to go to a therapist or a psychiatrist, or even have a complete burnout and a depression, which I had in 2006, when you start realizing that you've been wearing this mask of the wrong person for so many years. And then after a couple of years, I decided to go for my own business. And I was always in these big corporate environments where you got many accolades, and people loved what I did, but I always felt so empty. And then at some point, I understand when you're talking a panic attack. I understand completely what you're saying. um, and it's a horrible feeling indeed, especially when you have it several times. And it was funny that I think it was last week I had a panic attack, but I enjoyed it. Really, man, that was weird. It was like, because you learn to cope with them. You understand where this is coming from. This is a signal saying there is something changing. You're not really okay with it, but trust yourself. You've done it in the past. It's going to work out. These stories change completely, where in the past is like, something's happening, I don't know what did I do, blah blah blah, all this, it's bouncing all over the place. Where now it's like, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm responsible for what I do, I have control. And that's one of the things that I learned very late was, I always say, the circle of influence and the circle of concern.
Mhm.
What can you actually impact in your life? It starts with yourself, and then your direct surroundings, or the things that you're doing. But everything else, you're not able to influence that directly. So if you focus on this, it becomes a lot smaller than what your mind is making out of it. And when I learned to come into the now by mindfulness or meditation, or whatever, like you say, with your yoga, it's the same principles that kind of apply in different manners. It's just wonderful how you start to understand where all these things are coming from, and you start to accept them as a part of yourself, and signals that you're moving forward, basically. Because otherwise you won't get these things. If you're just sitting in a chair waiting for money to come in, it's not gonna change a lot, is it?
I feel like
Yeah,
you're speaking right to me. I mean, as I mentioned this to you before the show. I mean, I'm thinking about this. Like, I mean, so I got some news last night that was, I don't even know how to label it. It was just, it wasn't great, I guess we could say. But like,
yeah,
and I didn't sleep very well last night. Pardon if I sound a little groggy. It's because I am, because I didn't sleep very well. But the whole night I mean, I was noticing this, and like I mean, I think I'm still in shock by this, because it's just like this wasn't anxiety, this wasn't anger, this
Mm.
wasn't panic. It wasn't panic, because what I mean, it wasn't. It was
Okay.
exactly what you were saying. It was unfortunate news. It was information that I
Hmm.
am in control of using to make
Indeed.
changes that support that
Hmm.
information that I'm given. And again, like stoicism, I mean, I think stoicism is pretty much all about just learning what you have control over and what you don't.
Truly.
And really recommend the book for anybody. I probably bought 25 books, 25 of those daily stoic books, and handed them out to friends.
Mm.
But yeah, I mean, it's just learning what you have control over. And like this unfortunate news last night that I got, I mean, it's something about business, and it's, I mean, it's nothing unexpected either. The thing that was different was that I don't feel helpless. I don't feel powerless.
Ah,
Um,
yeah.
I feel like I'm going to have, there's some work ahead of me in terms of, making the changes that need to be made. But on the other
Hmm.
hand, it's like you start to like you start to learn that like this is life. Like life is work, I mean, everything, maybe work is even the wrong word. I mean, it's like having a child is work, but it's a challenge. It's a challenge that most of us are voluntarily taking on because we
Hmm.
want that challenge. So, news like what I got last night is it's a challenge, and why
Yeah.
wouldn't I be happy to take it on? I mean, and I've started asking myself that, like, really, really, like, being honest with myself. Like, do you want to just like lie on the beach all day? To be honest, sometimes like I would like to have that be part of my life, to have a couple weeks a year that I'm on the beach. But no, I mean, I'm not looking to just lie on a beach all day and not use my brain.
Hmm.
But like, I think that that is the difference. Like once you do this healing work, and like the healing work, and I think like it's kind of like I think a lot of us aren't afraid of healing. We aren't afraid of growth. I kind of use them interchangeably. I just don't think
Hmm.
we know we need to heal. I don't think we know that we have something to grow from. We grew up in dysfunction. We see our lives in dysfunction and we think it's normal. And I mean, it is normal if that's all we know. But like
Hmm.
for me, for example, like right now, like I grew up, I would say, like you could say just like overall like in a scarce mindset, grass isn't greener, be happy with what you have,
Yeah.
don't want more. And nothing's really changed in my life other than I don't believe that anymore. Like, you get bad
It's good
news.
on you.
It's true. It's like, I mean, something happens to you, I mean, it's like, what'll be will be. Like if I'm just making this up, but I'm like you get an audit from the IRS or something like that,
Mm.
and I'm not sure what they call it where you're at, but internal revenue.
Oh, we know the name.
Okay. So it's
We know
like,
the name.
I mean, I'm just kind of using this because it's not like too personal. It's not like a health concern or something, but
Mhm.
it's like you get this and like you don't know which way it's going to work out. Like there is just as good of a chance this could be like fine, and you
Yeah.
might learn something along the way, or you could like clam up and be afraid and be sleepless and tossing and turning because you're afraid, or you could be like I was last night, tossing and turning because my brain was problem solving. I still wish I would have problem solved when it was light out, but but
A little shift in time there.
it wasn't fear. It was empowerment. And
Yeah.
this was not, I mean, as I shared with you before this, I mean, 3 years ago, I would have had to probably cancel this because I would have been just like too anxious, honestly, I mean, to handle this. And now I'm like, bring it on. This is nothing. I can handle this.
It's to me the word strength really resonates, but it's not strength wherein I wouldn't call it a male form of strength. I would call it an emotional strength, where at some point your perspective changed so unbelievably towards these things, where I used to say, I feel or I am. You're not the emotion that you have. You feel the emotion.
Hmm.
There's a complete difference of perspective in those two. And when you have these situations, it's funny that you're mentioning the IRS, because actually a couple of weeks ago they came to my door,
Oh my
and
gosh.
my wife as well. So she's my VA, so she has her own business. And I think it was 3 or 4 months ago they came to the door for my business, and it was my old business, an old account number, blah blah blah. And the guys was like, I'm here for Phoenix Coaching. I'm like, that company doesn't exist anymore. But, come right in. And I was not anxious at all, because to me, I've learned that these people are human beings, and they have a job to do. And that's the only thing they have to do. They're not, they're not evil, they're not bad people. They just, I don't think anybody in the IRS, or any company like that, or any environment like that, was born, or was 3 years old saying, I'm going to be an inspector of the IRS. I don't think that, they kind of rolled into that job. So I welcome these guys with a cup of coffee. I put
Mhm.
them at, a nice spot at the table, and I say, okay, what do you need?
Mhm.
And I just print out what they need. And usually these things go so smoothly, while I hear, other people in my network who've had the exact same situation, and they were like, no, and I was all nervous, and I had to find these documents and didn't know where they were, and blah blah blah. And I'm like, take your time. They're not in a rush. We're not in a rush. But it's the perspective that makes such a big difference. And like you're saying, when you come in from an environment, I've had a wonderful youth. I have beautifully, and very loving parents. But my brother is 8 years older, and he's a high performer. He was always the guy who studied hard, hours on end, week through whatever. Me, I took 10 minutes, looked at my papers, and I went and did my exam. In the end, I had always 70%, or very good grades. But nobody was like, oh, wow, you don't have to do a lot and you get these grades. No, they were saying you could do better. And with my brother's like, well, yeah, he did a lot of studying, so whatever he's doing is fine. And the complete difference there is, like, I was the guy who always thought I was not good enough, while my brother was on the road to success from day one. And honestly, I do not blame my parents in any formal way. It's just how you come into the world and experience everything, and the people you meet, and so on. And then at some point, you realize that there's so many things that you have to unlearn from your past, to come to the point where you're just saying, oh yeah, well, okay, I got news. This is just news.
Mhm.
And tomorrow I'll pick this up, or the day after I'll pick this up. And even when you would have said, Nick, today I'm not into it, I need to cancel, that's fine as well, because that's one of the things that I've learned so clearly. I was sick last week. I had 2 days that I was completely out, and it took me 2 hours to decide to stay home or not. And I was like, why am I overthinking this? My body says stop, take the time. And I took 2 days. And yes, okay, I did not have any income. Okay, fine. I'll catch up in the future. It's just so funny how much we just drive ourselves forward within this bubble of you know completing tasks, and one thing after another, blah blah blah, while sometimes a break actually can help you. Sitting at the beach might be a good idea sometimes.
No, I love what you said. Oh my gosh, you're like just like I mean, like you're in my brain right now. Just like yeah. I mean, I have the same challenge sometimes where I mean, I have it often, and I've had to unlearn that. Like, it's not always going forward, and like always trying to make more money, save more money. And I've gotten
Mm.
this has been a big change for me over the past couple of years, is to really start asking myself what it is I need. And like I have, growing up, my parents taught me how to save. My parents were very fiscally responsible, but I mean, it was somewhat of a traumatic childhood financially, because we were always saving for tomorrow. There wasn't a lot of
Yeah,
enjoyment in my childhood. Um, like there wasn't a lot of enjoyment that could have been bought with money. I mean, we didn't really have any vacations, and there wasn't really any spending that was,
yeah,
I mean, unless it was imperative. And right now, like I've started to really integrate that in part of my decision making, and just like really like, rather than like, I don't think we should like necessarily not be saving money, but I think there is a balance, and I think like there is something to be said for that. What is it, like, die with zero plan?
mm,
That's not quite
mhm.
for me. I'm not looking to go that close, but I
My
do.
my grandmother did that.
I think it's great. I mean, I think it's to each their own, but I think like I think there's I think that's I guess what I'm saying is I think that is better than being like save, save, save and dying with $1 billion
Mm.
in the bank, or,
Yeah.
$100 million in the bank or whatever, when you're not
Mhm.
enjoying your life. And like, I've started to really think about that mental health piece too. I mean, I've been thinking about it for a long time, but in terms of like offering myself that break and being an entrepreneur too. I mean, it's funny because when I was like a corporate employee, I called in sick all the time. I definitely enjoyed my sick time, but I was a top performer and got my shit done.
Mhm.
But as an entrepreneur, I mean, I called in sick like, I don't know, 5 times in the past like 8 years, like maybe four. And I did take a mental health day, maybe like, I don't know, 6 months ago or so. Like I really did just like, and it feels so good, you know.
Yeah.
I call it passive work too. Like, I'm writing a book. I
Mhm.
have been putting a lot into my coaching business and getting my mentorship program going. And there are so many times where just going to yoga or going for a hike like helps so much. And I come back the next
Mhm.
day twice as productive, twice as inspired. So I do think that passive work, I don't know the ratio. Maybe it's like 65% active work and 35% passive is probably
Yeah.
where I'm at. It might, I think like like a real artist, a painter, maybe it's more, maybe it's more.
Yeah, they
Um,
probably need more, yeah.
but I think that if we're just going, going, going all the time, that's not. And also like this, there's this notion of like, you need some time to like evaluate, to get out, and like you can't read the label from inside the bottle. That's a new
Mhm.
phrase that I'm using a
It's a good
lot.
one.
Yeah,
It's a
I
good
mean,
one.
you need
Mhm.
to get out of your life for a second and take a look and see like, gosh, I didn't realize like that I wasn't taking care of myself the way that I needed
Mhm.
to. And I mean, I'm 40 years old. I just turned 40 about a year ago, and it's weird. Like I always knew that, like my doctor said this to me probably around like 28, was like, in your 20s, you can do whatever you want to your body, more or
Mhm.
less. In your 30s, you can kind of still treat it pretty bad. This is kind of when you learn those lessons. And then at 40, this is
Mhm.
when it starts to matter. And I do take pretty good care of my body, but physically, I do have some stuff going on. I have like a tennis elbow brace on. I don't even play tennis, but it's hurting. It's been like this for a couple of months. And it's really hit me over the past few. I have a hamstring issue. I mean, there's a lot going on with my body physically, and I'm athletic,
Yeah.
but it's really hit me like over the past couple of weeks in particular. Just like this is what they're talking about. I mean, in your 40s, you got to start caring for yourself. And I mean, I drink plenty of water. It's more than that, though. It's taking a bath or getting a massage. It's going to bed.
Indeed.
It's more than just eating well and drinking water and going to the doctor and taking vitamins. It's actually doing some of the harder work, which is slowing down when you need to, and telling your
True.
friends I can't do, canceling on things. I can't go tonight. I need a night by myself.
Mhm. Mhm.
I think it's a big challenge that I'm seeing right now. Like, more money, more problems, bigger things, bigger problems. And it's like, I'm noticing right now, I mean, I have been for a while, there's the calculation on the return on investment is different. Like
Mhm.
where there used to be two choices, one was good, one was bad. Now there's
Mhm.
five choices, and I have to pick the best of those five because they're all good.
Okay.
And that's been challenging. Like, do I do I work on this thing that's going to bring, I'm just making this up, do I work on this thing that's going to bring money through the door tomorrow, or do
Mhm.
I, which is nice and a good way to spend your time, or do I work on
Mhm.
this bigger thing that's going to bring money through the door in 5 years?
Yeah.
it, the 5 years is probably a little more important than focusing on today only in that regard.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I can believe that. Yeah, it's funny that you were mentioning earlier about the $0 end of life. In the beginning of the year, my grandmother, she was going to turn 101 a week after she died normally. So she's like really, she had a full life, but like the 15, I think the 10 last 15 10 years, she wasn't really there anymore. She was kind of mentally gone. But I had a conversation after her funeral with my brother, and He managed all the finances and so on because he lived really close to her. And it ended up that she had a couple of €1,000 in her bank account left over. And I'm like, bro, you've done all the work. I don't need any inheritance. You just keep the stuff and whatever. And I was saying, she was in a home, and the only things that we still had from her, from her whole life, were picture books, which these days for us is always a challenge because we've got everything on our phones or digitally somewhere, and a carton box with an old clock in there, and a couple of trinkets. And I was like, wow, do I want to do that? End up with in a cardboard box as being the last thing of my life. And it kind of confirmed as well where I've had the enormous drive to create a legacy.
Mm-hmm.
And the only way that I know to do that is by spreading my knowledge, my experience. I do a lot of spiritual work. I do deep spiritual work. I work with tarots and stuff like that. But I don't, that's not woo woo. It's really learning things from these visual things that can aid you in going deeper within yourself, and all those beautiful things like symbology and all of that stuff. And I've learned a lot of things on personal development level that have aided me to look at the world completely differently.
Mm-hmm.
And where, to me, things like what happens to you each day, there's always cause and effect story going on. And if you're one of these people who has a good view of what you want to do in 5 years, these things come to fruition. If you're doing it for tomorrow, it's going to come into fruition as well. It's going to be a smaller step maybe, but these things in 5 years, you're looking at the long term, and you know that you want to create something bigger. It's like, for me, the legacy thing is like within like 40, 50 years. I always said to my friends, I'll be 140 guaranteed. And they're like, no, 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 that's not possible. And they're like, I'm going to outlive everybody. It's as simple as that. So I got a lot of missions to do at the long term. But I've always found that if you put your mind to a certain aspect that gives you a longer term vision, it's more feasible as well, because then you can split up in small sections of stuff that you need to do. And if you're consistent,
Mm-hmm.
these things become amazingly powerful, because you actually build them up over so much time. They're going to be massive before you come out into the world. It's like writing your book. You start with one letter. It's not a paper full of letters. No, it's you start with one letter, and that letter could be I, and then the next word can be think, and then it goes from there. And at the end, you're like, maybe, I don't know how many pages you already got, but a 300-page book is a big work, and it's something that you have to work on to create. And if it's going to be ready in 5 years, it's going to be amazing, probably because you've probably edited so many times that everything's nicely put everywhere it needs to be.
Mm-hmm.
And where in the past, in the last 4 years, I was rushing from one thing to another. At this point, I don't have any customers. I'm going to be very clear. At this point, I do not have any customers for my coaching. I want to be open in that, very clear. And I have a company I work for, freelance. I enjoy that job. I want to do stuff after that, and I know I'm building now. I'm doing a lot of podcasting. I love this. Talking to you, man. It's I enjoy this. This is
Thank you.
we're so like-minded in so many ways, and I've had so many beautiful encounters in these last weeks. But I know that all these little encounters become a network that exponentially grows. And I'm living in Belgium. It's a country on the other side from the US. And I only have a network in the US, apparently, that's growing. And all these little things add up to such a beautiful end. And when you're saying you got a thing going in 5 years, I would say go for the 5 years. Absolutely. Of course, yeah, bread on the table. Absolutely. That something needs to be done. But there's always a way.
There's a,
There's always a way to find something to put the bread on the table. Absolutely. We always say you can always, start stocking shelves in one of the shops. That's what we always say here. Nobody does it, actually, but
Mhm.
it's an option. Uh, um, so we've been talking a while about your challenges, what you've been through, and the amazing lessons that you've learned, and how you've started to work with these things on your daily basis. Now, if you look at your industry where you're in right now, so you've done the beautiful baby stuff. It's amazing what you told me in the past about Mickey Mouse Pampers and stuff like that. I just I found it very funny, and I cannot imagine it, because for us it's just a bland thing. It's just, pamper is a pamper, something is that there. It's a diaper. Sorry, it's a diaper. We call it a pamper. That's a brand. Um, but how do you see the future within the industry at this point, where you are right now, from your perspective? How do you see these things evolve, like personal development and sales and all that beautiful stuff?
Man, I think everything is changing. I mean, I think that one of my gifts, one of my superpowers is I'm a realist, probably leaning a little bit towards the pessimism side.
Hmm.
On the maybe pessimism is the wrong word. I'm just very realistic,
Hmm.
thinking of like, I don't want to say worst case scenario, but being very realistic about like how things could be, And I think I have. I'm more empathetic than most people, I would say. I think that we are in a place right now, like, my baby product business. I consult other brands, and sales have changed. I mean, it's definitely not what it was. I've been doing this for 15 years, and I think that I'll tell you a couple of things that are going on. I think that our economy has affected things. The cost of living, I think, almost throughout the globe is astronomical at this point compared to what it used to
Hmm.
be. I make very good money, and I'm feeling the pinch right now. And I think, my partner and I, we live in LA. We bought a home with a very low mortgage rate or interest rate during the pandemic. We kind of can't
Uh-huh.
move because our interest rate is so low, and we don't want to move. But like, um, I think housing costs have really changed things, and I think we
It's
want to have
true.
experiences as well. But I think that like the last thing on our list is new clothes, or like I'm a big cook. I love cooking things, and I worked
Hmm.
for a kitchenware company for a while named OXO. This was back about 10 years ago. OXO,
Hmm.
their
Oh
global
yeah,
brand, and
yeah, indeed.
the thing is, like this higher end like houseware market is relatively new. And I bought, I have my all clad pans, I have my Wusthof knives. These things don't ever wear out. So it's like,
Yeah.
if you were to give me something that I needed for my kitchen that cost $1,000, I'd buy it because I cook that much. I don't need anything. Like, this stuff just does not
Hmm.
wear out. So like, um, I think that when you look at like the amount of people buying these like durable consumer or clothing goods, I mean, it's just
Hmm.
changed. It's no longer trendy. It's no longer admirable to be doing things like that. I think like
Hmm.
it's showing that you don't care about the environment. And I think that all of these things together are a huge change in the way people are spending their money right now. There's a
Hmm.
whole secondhand market that has changed, where people
True.
are, I mean, even myself, my partner and I are starting our surrogacy journey. And I mean, I have money, but I am not going to be spending $10,000 on a nursery where, 10 years ago, that was, I mean, geez, probably people spent $20,000 on a nursery.
Hmm.
That's not on brand for me. And it's not on brand, I think, for a lot of people. These days. So I think that I mean I think corporate is going to be challenged a bit. I mean, people need to make money. And the best way I know how to do that is by being an entrepreneur. You're in charge of your own destiny. You can be more
Hmm.
creative. There's no cap on what you can make. You could also
Hmm.
create a business that aligns with your needs. I just read a book recently that just really surprised me. It's called The E Myth, The Entrepreneur Myth. And I forget who it was by, but this book, I think it was like 30 years old or something, and it talks
Yeah.
about like how to create a business. But like, I really took away from this like how to create your life, and it's nothing you haven't heard before, but they put it like this: like, think about your primary aim. So that's what you want to be a good father, you want to be an attentive husband, you want to retire at a certain age, work that many hours a week, and then you craft a plan around that. And
Yeah.
I think that you and I could become billionaires if we wanted to. I don't
Mm.
want to work that hard. I enjoy being at home. I don't want to be in an airplane that much. I don't. I
Hmm.
mean, if I wanted to be a billionaire, I would have to like. I wouldn't be here talking to you, right? I would have to be
Yeah.
working really hard to figure
Hmm.
that out. And
Hmm.
once I have figured that out, then we'd be talking. But but yeah, I mean, I think that we are all in a place where the dollar or whatever currency is local for you listening right now
Hmm.
does not go as far as it used to. And I think that we need to pay attention to this, and you need to treat your employees very well because they have a lot of options. And
Yeah.
I think that our society thrives on the employee thinking that they need to be grateful for what they have. And I think people like you and I are out there showing them that they need
Hmm.
not be thankful for something that's less than excellent. I mean, especially if they're an excellent contributor. And I think the
Hmm.
more that employees learn that they have options to change. I mean, in the U.S., like the unemployment rate is as low as it's just about ever been, and we don't see this changing. I just saw actually that our interest rate, Jerome Powell, the Fair Ched, the Ched. Fed chair announced he's changing the interest rate trajectory for this year because unemployment is so high, and I don't see this changing because
Yeah.
unemployment is so low. My apologies.
Yeah.
I don't see this changing, and I think employees are going to continue to have more and more options, and we need to take care of them the best we can and treat them like we would treat ourselves. And that's the
That's
future of business right now. It's taking care of people. It's taking care of your customers too. People are smart. Consumers are smart. They're not
yeah.
buying things they don't need like at the same rate they used to. They're buying things because there's a lifestyle associated with it. They care about the brand.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I can go on forever about this, but I think it's all changing. And you know what? It's not that scary when you embrace this change and
It's
you
true.
face the truth and you are willing to grow and to see like and to really put yourself in your consumer shoes and your customer shoes and your employee shoes and see how
Hmm.
you would see what you would need. It's not
Hmm.
that hard.
Yeah, well, I completely follow you in the story where you take care of your employees, take care of your customers. I've decided to go towards that more high level quality service towards my customers because of that. Because of it, it's also there's one side, it's profitable, yes, absolutely, but what we provide with that profitability is so much more because it gives us opportunity to learn and to evolve as well. um, but if you have a customer who needs your help and you're able to help them within an eye pinch, uh, that's so much more worth than what used to be. I had this horrible experience in the past where I went into one of those clothing shops and I was looking, I'm a man, so don't ask me about colors. Brown is brown for me. I don't have any 20,000 different kind of shades in there. It's brown. I was looking for a brown tie, which is kind of a strange color, I know, but it was kind of a reason for it. I was looking for a brown tie. I came in and I asked one of the ladies that was there, can you help me find a brown tie? And she was really rude. I was like, I'm just gonna buy a tie, which might be €10 or $10 or whatever, but there might be a reason why I wanted the brown tie because I actually was looking for a brown suit after that. But first thing in mind was brown tie, and it made me realize that um, salespeople within a clothing shop who are friendly, helpful, who see the customer, who listen. I'm going to put that one first. Who listen and helpful, etc. They are up for such a growth spurt within their career if their employer also recognizes that. And it's the same thing with working with a customer. When you listen very well, you know exactly where the problem is.
Mhm.
It's a challenge. I'm still training myself on listening to my customers as well, even though I've been coach for years. It's a different kind of listening. But I think if an employee has a certain capacity to understand a lot more than just what's in front of them, they're up for a beautiful story, and they are indeed going to find anything they want out there as a possible job.
They could be
I've seen
entrepreneurs.
people.
I mean, that's the thing. Like I heard this quote the other
Yeah,
day that said like I think that yeah, like it was like a podcast about entrepreneurs or something, and it was saying like you're an entrepreneur, you want a right hand person to do all this stuff for you. Well, that person doesn't exist. They're an entrepreneur themselves. If they
yeah.
figured out how to do all that, they're they're doing what you're doing.
Hmm,
Yeah,
hmm.
I mean it's so true. Like I mean, and that's what I mean. It's about taking like you might be this shop owner, and if your employee is treating people bad, like that needs to not happen, and it's not
Yeah.
necessarily the employee's fault. It's probably because the
No, no,
employee
no,
is
no.
treated probably not fairly by the shop owner, and the
Indeed.
employee doesn't care, and I wouldn't care either if I never had, I mean, if I was treated horribly. Let me say that differently. I care about everything. I have a lot of integrity, but like
Hmm.
I think that everyone needs to have motivation, and needs to have a reward system, it needs to have accountability, needs to have
Yeah.
um, and I mean, there needs to be like, there's a reason that people are not doing their best at work. It's because they're not
Hmm.
being taken care of from the top.
Yeah, indeed, indeed. I got one more question for you, Matt, and I'm going to read my cheat sheet because I've got these questions I've sent to people. But so when it comes down to your personal fulfillment, what's one thing you'd like to share for the very last person who's going to listen to this podcast in the future?
I think it comes down. I mean, yeah, I'm going to go with my gut instinct on this. I think it comes
Hmm.
down to reading, to learning. Like, I am an avid reader, and it's very interesting. Like, like in business and as an entrepreneur, I don't make a lot of mistakes in entrepreneurship because you have these books. They cost $20, €20, and
Yeah.
they are filled with other people's mistakes that are teaching you not to make those mistakes in life. And
Yeah.
it's, I mean, and you don't even have to read anymore. You can listen to audiobooks. You could also, I mean, they're, watching a biography,
Hmm.
watching a, like a documentary, but like, I mean, even like, podcast, there is no excuse to not, like, there's no, I mean, if you don't like to read, you have a lot of options still to learn. And
Hmm.
man, I mean, I listen to, probably 3, 4 hours of podcast a day. I have an audiobook going all the time. I'm reading, I don't know, 5 or 6 different books right now. And I'm not like, there's not like pressure on me either. I mean, like I do what I can do, and I'm not reading them all every day. But
Hmm.
I've gotten so much wiser from it. I mean, just there there is nothing standing in the way of me and pursuing my dreams. Not even money, because most of this stuff is free. Like most of this wisdom is free or
That's
nearly
true.
free. So
Yeah.
it's like I think there was a time when we had to go to college to learn something, and now you have
Mhm.
YouTube. There's masterclass. That's $100 a year or whatever it is. But
Yeah.
just keep learning, keep growing, and you don't have to like read things that you don't want to read either. Like read what interests you, learn what interests you.
Hmm.
But I was listening to a book yesterday, an audiobook, a friend of mine actually, and just was talking about, I'm gonna give like rough numbers, but it's like I think if you read like 15 minutes a day, you end up
Uh-huh.
reading like 20 books a year or something. I mean, it was just like insane when you think about it that way.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
So
right. Yeah.
I just think there's
Yeah.
nothing that we can't figure out. And whether it be reading or podcast or listening or watching YouTube, you can learn anything you want to learn these days.
Yeah. That's one of the things I wanted to bring to my kids as well. I got a 13 and 11-year old, and I think it was this weekend I told them about AI, for instance. They're listening. Well, they got this instruction at school. You're not allowed to use it. Blah blah blah. And I'm like, okay, school's there. You're home. If you want to use AI, go right ahead. You can learn from it. And I said, got any questions that you normally put in a Google or whatever? Ask that AI thing and see what comes out of it, just to learn on how it. This is their future. For us, this is like the new hype and whatever. I think it's kind of simmering down a little bit, but nonetheless, I use it vividly. I use it a lot. And of course, you always have to think this is a machine. It is not a thinking person. Blah blah blah. Absolutely, but there's so many things at the tip of our fingers. All this knowledge is there. Where I have this book, I think I mentioned it last time. The what's it called again? The Art of Character. I think
Okay.
it's the first book that launched me in my personal development story. It was from 1887, and then you got this Napoleon Hill coming in like the 1900s, 10 stuff like that. All these books contain so much beautiful wisdom, and usually you just find them on archive.org or whatever, and you just dump it on your phone, read it on the train or whatever, or like you say, audiobooks. Most of the people that read these books already made an audio at some point about, because they're just so passionate about the content. And it's indeed true that everything that we can learn, it's out there. We just have to, take the time to do it. And in all honesty, I got a good friend of mine. He puts everything on double time, so he puts everything on two speed, and he says, "I don't listen to the exact words, but I got the gist of it." I'm like, "Wow, you're gaining so." I'm not able to do that. My brain doesn't work that way. But I was at some point thinking about listening in my sleep, even,
Mhm.
because that also works. But
You know,
my wife doesn't want me to have headphones in the bed.
I listen to double time for most things. I do slow down when I have to, I mean, like, and I'll rewind. But I don't know. I mean, I'm sure that there's a lot of arguments against what I'm doing, and I totally support that. I'm probably not getting quite as much as I think I am sometimes, but I think I'm getting more than some people might think because
I think that's the gist mostly.
y
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean,
You're probably gonna be there.
I think I'm hearing everything, but I do think like when I'm trying to learn something new, I do slow down on those sometimes. But I think your brain kind of gets used to listening to things fast. I used to live in New York; everything was fast. So,
Yeah,
uh,
yeah. I remember that when I lived there as well.
but yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of options out there. And honestly, with the AI thing, one of my like biggest weaknesses, I am not that technologically interested. I don't
Mm.
like. I mean, it's funny. When I was a kid, I remember like helping my grandma set up her VCR and what I wouldn't give to have some like 10-year-old neighbor that's willing to come over here and like set up things for me so I am using AI, but
Mm.
not as much as what I should be because I'm just a little bit of a slower adopter to those types of things. So, but I mean, I
Mm.
agree with you. I mean, I think the kids should be learning this. I mean, it's like you and I,
Yeah,
we learned, we were around when the internet like became,
yeah,
and I'm very
absolutely.
comfortable Googling things, I mean, it's
Yes.
like that was like that's how we learned, but AI, I mean,
Google kind of helped me with my first job, so.
like everything I know about AI, it's just that it's only going to be as good as as the user puts into it. So
Mm.
I think it's important that the kids learn how to use it. So
Yeah, absolutely.
and embrace it too. I mean, as an entrepreneur, who knows what the world is going to be like in 15 years for our kids? 20 years, like, I
Yeah.
mean, even right now, I mean, there's no awards for how much you figure out on your own. I mean, it's all about efficiency, and you don't need to know things you don't need to know. But I'm a big math person. I do well at math, and I think like I couldn't imagine if I didn't like as I'm doing my math if I wasn't able to double check in my head along the way. And
Oh
I
yeah.
think some people can't. They see 2 multiplied by 10 and it comes out to be 700. They don't notice that that's not right.
Mhm.
Like you
Mhm.
have to, there's some things you do need to know along the way. But
The brain differently connected at some point. Indeed, yeah. So, Matt, thank you very much for your time. I know you're crunched on time. It's you got a very busy schedule. Thank you so much for taking the time.
thank you.
I would love you to tell our listeners today what's the next thing that you're going to do, and where can they find you when you're doing it.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I've really had a great time talking with you today. Thank you for having me and putting up with me being a little more tired than what I normally am. But I've enjoyed this very much. So if anyone's interested in learning more, you can check me out on my website, mattgerlach.com. I'm very active on Instagram at I am Matt Gerlach. And I offer one-on-one mentorship services for men who are looking to work through feelings of inadequacy and break through. They might have some background of limiting beliefs that they need help with, and I'm living proof. I mean, the life of your dreams is possible, and growing isn't scary. I think that so many of us are afraid to grow because we don't know we need it. But I'll tell you, the return on investment for growth happens pretty quickly. Setting that first boundary, learning to say what you want, learning to say what you don't want, what you won't tolerate. Um, all of this introspection really, the ROI on it's pretty quick. So I'd love for anyone to reach out, schedule a free 30-minute call, and I'd be happy to speak with you and just get to know you. So thank you very much for having me, and look forward to hearing from you.
I'm so very happy we had this conversation. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
Okay, everybody. Thank you again for listening to the everlasting. Well, I kind of misspelled that word. Thank you for listening to the Everlasting podcast, and we will hear you again next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the Everlasting podcast. Let me leave you with a few questions to answer in the comments. How do you see the different topics we discussed during this interview? What are your thoughts? What stood out for you? Let us know in the comments or just send us your feedback. We launch new episodes weekly. Don't miss any by ensuring you are subscribed to the show. Click the follow button now. We depend on the organic growth of the podcast to inspire more and more people. So by giving us a 5-star review and sharing this episode with at least one of your friends who might be interested in the subject, you will significantly help more people become inspired. But more than anything, I am grateful to you for taking the time to listen to the show. If you are also a successful CEO, founder, or entrepreneur who has inspiring words to say, feel free to contact us for an interview at contact@nicovandevenne.com. Thank you for listening. We will see you again soon with more inspirational conversations on achieving everlasting fulfillment.